O'Hara is gone as the police chief of Minneapolis, but the damage left in the wake and the reasons for the departure still reverberating. In our last segment, we talked about maybe the misuse of the term bombshell by the U.S. House Committee. I do think some of the reporting of our next guest is squarely in the bombshell category. Liz Sawyer has been all over these investigations, these allegations into the now former Minneapolis police chief for the Minnesota Star Tribune. And she joins us in studio today to talk a little bit about what she learned. And really this report this weekend, Liz, that has so much information about really, I think the large question a lot of us were left with, which is, okay, he resigned because he interfered with the investigation into himself. But like, what was it? What did he do besides like the unproven allegation that he had affairs with employees? Thanks for coming in.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
This weekend, you reported a number of allegations that were in an unfiled lawsuit, which as a former reporter, I would be a little nervous about an unfiled lawsuit because you could say, now you can say whatever you want in a lawsuit. You can say whatever you want at maybe times two in an unfiled lawsuit. What made you to decide to report this stuff?
Well, people make allegations all the time, whether they're filed in court or not. We report on allegations against police officers all the time that are in complaints, sometimes that are not made public. When we obtained this document, we took it very seriously. We only reported on a portion of it, but we chose to do so because of the timing and the seriousness of the allegations in it. The timing, it was sent to city attorneys 2 full weeks before former Chief O'Hara was renominated by the mayor. And it contained both things that we know to be true, including the existence of this recording that prompted the reopening of the misconduct investigation to the chief. But it also included some new allegations we had not heard before, including some very serious ones that we thought the public had a right to know, and wondered whether the city had taken any steps.
The allegation that really jumped out to me is an allegation that the chief had a drunk driving crash that was cleaned up by his driver, who has since been put on leave because of some of the allegations that have come out over the last couple of weeks. Lay that out for us.
Yeah. According to this department whistleblower, who was fundamental to reopening the investigation into Chief O'Hara, the chief's driver had confessed to him essentially that the chief had gotten into an incident sometime prior to June 2024, and that he had struck something with his city-owned department vehicle, and the driver had gotten it fixed, quote, off the books at a mechanic, and no one knew about it. There were never any criminal charges. There was never any report about it. So that's something that the driver allegedly told the whistleblower and was contained in this document. Now, to be clear, I have not been able to independently verify that claim, and the city says that they have received no information to support that allegation, but it was reported to city attorneys in this document.
Yeah, and why would they have information to support it if indeed the driver did a good job of covering it up and bringing the vehicle to his buddy who's a mechanic, and it all was done quietly?
Exactly right. Who would be filing a complaint about that? Who else would even know about it other than the driver and maybe the mechanic?
Right. Who would have good reason to keep his mouth shut too. Like, I mean, there's no reason to think there would be. The fact that there's no like paper trail on this doesn't mean anything. Mm-hmm. Liz Sawyer is with us from the Minnesota Star Tribune. So that stood out. And the other part of this is sort of the special position that this driver seemed to have. And this driver is not just a driver. He's an officer in the Minneapolis Police Department, but he was really protected by the chief, according to the whistleblower, right?
Right. This officer, Abdisamad Ahmed, he's since been relieved of duty, and that only happened, 3 days after the chief resigned, and after we started asking questions for this recent story, frankly, where we said, given the allegations against him, why is he not on administrative leave? And then action was taken that same day.
Coincidence? I don't know. It seems like when Liz Sawyer comes calling, they were like, uh-oh.
But the driver, according to this draft lawsuit, held a pretty high position there. The chief had hand selected him to be essentially his community liaison, but he went with him to crime scenes, to press conference, to community events. Frankly, he was sort of his shadow. Every time you saw the chief out in the community, you often saw the driver with him. And according to this document, the driver bragged even to people that he was untouchable because of everything he knew about the chief and the text messages that he had.
So, to a certain degree, the chief has resigned. The chief's misconduct. I can see why some people would say, "Who cares now? It's over." What I care about is with all of this smoke, how does the mayor renominate him? How does his supervisor? What did he know? Todd, the head of the public safety department. That's why this story is still relevant, right? I think it's easy to push back and say, like, Liz, like, this is old news. The guy's gone. But
Well,
it's not old news.
a couple things. I mean, how much money has the city spent to investigate the chief and the driver? This original allegation came in April of 2025, and there were two separate investigations. We believe one is still ongoing about the driver. That could be tens of thousands of dollars of taxpayer money that the city has spent. But also, we still don't know everything that the city knew. Yes, the mayor has said repeatedly, I didn't know then what I know now, and that as soon as I had substantiated findings from this external law firm, I took action. But my story from this weekend shows, well, city attorneys knew more than what we originally thought at a bare minimum. And did they escalate that information? What was done with it? Because my source is telling me that someone with direct knowledge is saying, listen, no one did any further vetting even after this was brought to their attention.
Interesting. So you could look at it and say, why was this stuff being sort of shut down at the city attorney level, where somebody like me is saying, why would the mayor renominate this chief with all of this available? Maybe the better question is why was this stuck in the city attorney's office?
Well, if it was not, in fact, passed on to the mayor, which they say it was not, that he was unaware of this document, even the existence of this document, then why not?
Why not?
Because one could argue that some of the stuff in there could be disqualifying to this candidate that he then 2 weeks later put before the council.
Yeah, and if that is truly how it played out, if I'm the mayor, I'm pissed. I'm like, these guys really hung me out to dry by not giving me this information. Of course, I don't know all the legalities, right? Of like, are you allowed? But I certainly hope you'll be able to share this stuff with the mayor.
And
with Todrick Barnett, right?
Right. And we don't know who all it was shared with. We've asked that question. And to be fair, the city says we get these kinds of documents all the time. They're used as negotiating tools and in this case, the whistleblower's attorney was trying to negotiate on the interview process. Right. So there is context about it, the way in which it was sent. However, there were on its face things in there that were credible, and there were things in there that would be concerning that the public would like an answer to.
Liz Sawyer is with us from the Minnesota Star Tribune. You've been working on this story for a long time. There have been rumors around the chief for a long time, but there are always rumors about, it's a difficult thing as an outsider to say, like, all right, do I give credence to these rumors, or is it like being a police chief is a political job? There are always going to be people who are launching bombs at a chief, trying to take him or her down based on whatever. I guess, can you give a little bit of the timeline of how long you've been working on this stuff?
Yeah.
How you knew it was like, this is more than sour grapes?
I've been looking into this for over a year. My husband will tell you I've probably been further down the rabbit hole than any other reporter in the state on it. But that's because I cover the Minneapolis Police Department. I have been covering the police force for over 6 years. I talk to a lot of officers all the time, and there has been a constant drip of rumors about Chief O'Hara, frankly, since he started. Cops love to gossip. A lot of people know that. And I have had to try and wade through all of these rumors to determine what is real and what's not. But it wasn't until last spring when a formal investigation was prompted by this anonymous complaint, that things started to feel real and serious. And so we have been on it ever since then. That first investigation closed with unsubstantiated findings. And so we did not publish a story at that point. And then it reopened. And that's really what led us to start publishing a bunch of things. And frankly, his complaints began to balloon in the last 6 months. He already had more than any of his predecessors. Some of that may have been political. It is true that some came out as a result of Operation Metro Surge. But he had 30 complaints, 22 of which remained open at the time of his renomination. And that is an astronomical number compared to all of the prior police chiefs.
Next steps for your reporting, next questions you're looking into?
I think we still have a lot to find out about who knew what when. I think we still have questions on that and what will happen with this driver who's now been relieved of duty. Does he in fact have the kind of evidence that he's alleged to have? And we'll see what happens with a permanent replacement. The interim chief, Billy Peterson, has said that he does not intend to seek the permanent role. So who does want to step up internally? And if they have a national search, what kind of candidates are we going to get?
Yeah. Liz Sawyer, great reporting. It's really important. And it is a reminder in a world where we have, and I like the social media commenters and the kind of gossip spreaders. I enjoy some gossip too, but it does show some of the ethics and the decision-making that goes on at an organization like the Star Tribune, that you would spend a year on this stuff because it's people's lives and careers and it's important.
Yeah, we take it seriously.